All right. So yes, namaste everybody. I'm Dr. Srinivas Sastry Maladi, and I'm here welcoming you all to our Soham Vidya Satsanga, which we have been conducting mainly through webinars, teaching principles of Sanatana Dharma, and both in Telugu and English. And time to time, we do have some interesting sessions under the concept of reroute with Dharma. And the video that you have seen just now is in relation to that. Our previous guests have been Ayurvedic practitioner and then Vedic farmer. We had great sessions in the past. So today is our turn to discuss the much talked about book, which is India, that is Bharat, written by Sri Sai Deepak, who is advocate in Supreme Court. I'm joined by Yogi. Yogi, are you there? I don't see your name.
Hari Om, namaste.
Oh, yes, yes. Namaste, Yogi. Yes. Yogi is here with us. And if I'm lucky, I may be able to see Maitri as well, but she's very busy this weekend. So perhaps may not be able to join. But if she just does join, that will make this study group discussion complete. All right, so me and Yogi are going to discuss some interesting top parts of the book. And I'm sure if any of you have already read or read part of it, you can also contribute towards the end. So let me introduce Yogi. Yogeshwar Chivukula is Yogi for short. And he did his engineering, but became a finance professional. He is a follower of Sanatana Dharma and a student of Sanskritam, a believer in Bhagwan Ramana's self-inquiry. So Yogi comes from a banking background and engineering background. So I'm sure he's well placed in talking about some of the civilizational aspects that we can enrich in future for our own societal progression. I'm a psychiatrist by profession, and I'm interested in holistic kind of application of these concepts, and also bringing in a wide change in society, hopefully through healthy kind of dialogue. Perfect. Okay, so Yogi, I'm going to pin you and myself so that we are both visible. So let me pin myself as well. I guess I need to go back to the gallery. Oh, yes. Okay, perfect. All right, Yogi, then I think one of the first things that we should both do is rejoice on the fact that somebody like Sai Deepak has really taken the initiative in writing the book, and that too at a young age, being extremely proactive in setting an example in a very inspirational way, because a lot of us shy away from really making our views public, and that too at a time when he himself says that quite famously in one of the interviews, if I don't do it in this lifetime, I will see Sanatana Dharma perish in front of me. And that's a very alarming statement. Any initial thoughts you had on the sense of urgency that you have seen through the book?
Sure. Thank you so much. Namaste Sarvebhya. Namaste to all. Thank you, Shastri Garu, for inviting me, giving me this opportunity. I'm in no way I can make a claim that I have well read and have a very deep knowledge on the Indic consciousness. But being a follower of Sanatana Dharma and knowing what is happening around. So coming back to that question, seeing what is happening around us in terms of various politico-social developments, in terms of the recent Citizenship Amendment Act or the 370 article. There has been a lot of activity that recently has happened. But even prior to that, we have been under constant pressure where we've been pushed to margins. In fact, I had the opportunity to listen to Sai Deepak by chance for a last few years, where he's been advocating the need to actually stay active, get into a very real active mode with respect to how you're going to protect your own dharma, the aspects with related to protecting your own consciousness, where you take at least an active role either at the grassroots level or at the thought influencing level or some leadership level, but you can't just keep quiet, because you are really being marginalized, because you what you were in the past, you're totally different with respect to either geography or in terms of sheer numbers itself. So that's a very big wake up call. And in this context, when the book really happened, I was really thrilled and was very keen to know what he has come out with. And must say that, okay, I've done one reading, but it is not sufficient. It needs multiple readings, and requires multiple discussions. Yeah, there I'll stop.
Definitely, I would agree with you that it needs a lot of studying, and also the way it is presented, the book is presented. I mean, I must say that I'm never a fan of reading what looks like more like a PhD kind of information, but there is room for that. There is room for having excerpts from various articles from the past, particularly the British parliamentary discussions, as well as the write-ups by various Indologists from the past who have been somewhat ignored completely by the left-leaning historians, whitewashing a lot of colonial kind of aspects of our history, and presenting to us in a very bland way, as if we are the ones who need to be apologetic, and any utterance of the wrongs that have been done to us is seen as nothing but fanatical from our side. And it's put us in a very awkward situation all this while. It's now almost like, well, I'm glad that there is a space for me to open up. I'm glad there is a space for me to voice out the concerns I have for the very idea of dharma. And the dharma, it in itself, is not just confined to a land, it is a cosmic principle. And it's been stifled and suffocated by our own people. And that's what I have presented in our 4-minute video as well when we started. Now, coming to an interesting observation I had, Yogi, is how Sai Deepak actually says, I thank the gods for giving me this opportunity. I don't know if you have noticed it, but I found it an extremely important mention, the word
Fantastic.
gods in plural. Now,
Absolutely.
that actually goes very much against the monotheistic colonial kind of attitude of the Abrahamic faiths of saying God in a singular and bombarding us the entire world with the concept of monotheism. I'm glad that you observed it as well.
Very true, very true. In fact, he holds no. I mean, he doesn't really bother about being politically correct or anything. He wants to really call a spade a spade. So that way, the way monotheistic religions try to bring their monotheism and make conversions happen in India, and to some extent they were successful, but to a large extent they haven't yet been. Okay, we'll come to that. That he is calling the many gods that we worship is actually again a reaffirmation that please don't be sorry that okay you have many gods to look up to. You don't have to be apologetic that okay you don't have one god, because I've heard people really thinking that way. This is where it is very important for many of this young generation to read this book.
Right, great. Thank you. So let's get into the thick of the topic then. I want you to perhaps help me or help the audience, I must say. Even I have read the book, but not as thoroughly as you have done. So I'm sure you are in a better position. So let's start with the whole idea of understanding coloniality, colonization, colonialism, before we even go to the whole idea of post-colonization and decolonization. I know it's a lot for the audience to take in, especially if you haven't read the book. these are important concepts for us to hear and understand, because this is the basics. These are the basics before we can even proceed. Over to you,
Definitely.
Yogi.
Yeah, sure. I hope you're able to see this book now. This is the book, friends, India, that is Bharat, and then the subtitle, Coloniality, Civilization, and Constitution. And there is a reason why he places these words the way here. And this is a trilogy. This is the first book of a trilogy that has come out, and there are going to be two more sequels to this book. And the reason he has done this in three sequels or three trilogy is that he has not just started off with India. I'll just come back to your question with respect to definition. I'm just laying the foundation for the book itself. Uh, the the history with respect to how really the colonization started off from the 15th century onwards, the way the colonization, the colonies happened from the Europe-centered nations, mainly Portugal and Spain, how it started. He actually starts off from there as to how the Americas, be it the North America, the Latin America, the Australia, or other nations, or the African continent. So, how these were colonized, and what was the real purpose with which they really went about doing this. So that is where he really sets the premise with respect to the colonization. So that is the first part of the book, which is where he defines where we are. Let's understand, okay, the colonization. So what we typically understand, I think all of friends also relate to that. So colonization is the process or phenomenon by which people from a particular nation land up in another nation which is not their own, and establish colonies in that place. And in the process, what happens is they actually exploit that particular nation, and also for their own benefit and the benefit of their parent nation. They will keep a bond with their parent nation. So there are different types of colonizations that are possible. Where he speaks of settler colonization, or that. So in terms of the colonization, that is where we're talking of, where one nation tries to set up colonies in another. And then how does he really go about it? The policy that he actually follows is the colonialism. So the very policy that he uses is that, okay, I can, by way of approaching, or not approaching, by way of conquering and occupying these nations, I'm actually furthering my policy. Okay, but most important thing in this whole vocabulary that he actually sets up is the coloniality. Now, colonization is the process. Colonialism is the policy. Now, coloniality is the mindset, is the psychology. Now, he refers to it as the software, while the hardware is that, okay, he comes with all the infrastructure, armies, everything. He sets up the physical infrastructure or government or things like that. But the mindset with which he actually runs these colonies, which is the coloniality, where the colonizer, is not just occupying the place, he's also actually making sure that his way of thinking, his religion, will come to that. How he's interested in furthering his interest, his religion into the other colonized set of colonized society, so that they actually become a part of his way of thinking. I mean, he is not just happy with looting, plundering, and taking away the benefits, not just the monetary aspects, which is typically how we are told that, okay, they came in for commercial reasons. No, there was a larger interest, that was the coloniality, the mindset with which they came. I'll pause there.
Okay. Yes, I think to kind of once again reiterate the whole point, what is important is the coloniality. I think the mindset that makes the difference. Now, I guess it is fair to say that prior to colonies that we know of in modern history, that kind of a mindset or the vigor with which the imposing nature, the imposing and overpowering and annihilating attitude wasn't possibly seen, at least in the history that is documented. We don't know about the undocumented part of history. So this mindset, I guess, from what we have read, we understood, comes from the Abrahamic kind of religious kind of fixation, as was rightly put. It is, we are obviously quoting Sai Deepak. We are not talking about our own impressions here, because Sai Deepak has done it extremely easy for us to quote already existing information through the historical documents. So we are actually here quoting the historical documents, and the historical documents are suggesting that the Abrahamic kind of understanding of how soul as a concept, a soul which is within the Christian kind of way of understanding with the Christian faith. One who has accepted the Christian faith is known to have the soul, is how we have understood from the papal document when the Portuguese were about to go out. Christopher Columbus was supposed to be going out to explore the world. And the further understanding was that anybody who is a heathen, therefore, the term used for our audience to understand is the word heathen. Now, heathen basically is used to somebody who does not have that soul or hasn't accepted Christ or the Christianity. So Sai Deepak gives three categories there. And one of the categories is the idolaters, another is the infidels, and another is the believers. So the believers are the ones who have the soul. Idolaters are ones who actually come from the Sanatana Dharmic background, and even the Native Americans for that matter. So these are all heathens, and they are therefore considered as inferior and need to be kind of or trained into, or trained, and possibly the right word is to converted into their way of thinking. And it's not just, one of the things is exploitation perhaps, but the other is also this whole idea that I'm going to save the world. I'm actually saving these people from entering into a hell. So it's a burden that they impose upon themselves naively, or is it like a superstition? I call it as a superstition, because a belief that has no basis perhaps can be easily challenged from a theological perspective. And I can actually quote a lot of evidence from spiritual research to say that surely Atma, the concept of Atma is a lot more prevalent, and it's there in everything. And this concept is therefore a lot more a superstition. And to believe in it, impose it on the entire world, and in the process, eliminate people, cultures, languages, education systems, change the ways of life. And that's preposterous. And this is the coloniality that we are talking about here. And thank you for giving those ideas. I just wanted to add that bit there. Now, what is the connection? I think we'll come very quickly to the connection with India. What happened with India and what is happening still in India? I'm sure you will bring in the words of post-colonization and decoloniality, the relevance of this here.
Absolutely. Yeah, just a point when you brought idea of superstition. How could a religion, how could they think that, okay, theirs is the superior most religion and the rest of the world are heathens and they have to fall in line with their religion. And while actually they refer to, for example, India as superstitious, the dark world, the idol worshippers, who are actually, I mean, who don't know anything, and they have to be brought into the culture. They're uncivilized. They have to be brought into civilization. They don't know. They're ignorant of their civilization. What is civilization? So we should really teach them. They took it upon themselves as a conviction that they have to really transform us and show us what is civilization. And supposedly that is how actually they set foot on our soil. And while it was not Christopher Columbus, he wanted to actually set sail towards India, but he lost direction, or he did not know how to really navigate. He ended up in the Americas. It was a few years later when Vasco da Gama actually set foot in Cochin. Okay, so coming back to the question, with respect to post colonization and then the decoloniality, which is the most important aspect, decoloniality, that Sai Deepak is interested. And thank you for mentioning as to the source. Now, Sai himself doesn't really profess to be a great scholar in all this, and to make sure that people don't really debunk him, saying that okay, hey, we know your ideological preferences, and we know that okay, you are actually informed in that angle, and that's the reason why this book talks like that. No, he actually quotes scholars and Western scholars, people who have written extensively on this, quotes. In fact, there are big extracts that actually he directly puts in the book, so that, in fact, in one of the interviews, he was saying, if I put it in the appendix, people, have you ever really looked up the appendix and referred that book? People don't do that. So I thought it's better that I put the extract directly in the book itself. So that was one of the reasons why there are a lot of extracts put in there. So he quotes a lot of sources, and he doesn't claim that okay, this is something me that I'm actually saying. Now, after having read all this, the papal bull that you have referred to, now very clearly, I'll take a minute on that, Sastri, please. Are you?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
your video stuck? Oh,
No,
okay,
no, no.
sorry. So I'll just take a minute on that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, here was the situation where, a papal bull, you can say bull is like a directive or an instruction which a pope used, and he used to give many directions, and he is the religious head for them. So, he gave a direction to both the kings of Spain and Portugal that you can go in this direction and conquer whatever that comes your way. You can occupy all those lands and make them as colonies. If they fall in line, uh, uh, evangelize them. If not, you turn them to slaves. This is the very clear directive where the whole project was to really spread Christianity, and in the process also make economical gain. So the main objective was evangelization. So in India, coming to so the post-colonial period ideally should start from 1947 when we attained independence, or you can say maybe 1950 when we drew up the constitution, when we became a republic as such. So since that time is the post-colonial period. Now, during this post-colonial period, what was the thought process? How our thinking was already influenced or acculturated. I mean, in terms of their way of thinking, we were no longer thinking like the native Indians. We had lost, or coming back to the reroute video, right? This is where actually decoloniality, I would link reroute and decoloniality as kind of synonyms. We had really forgotten our ways of the past. Now, uh, between 800 AD and 1600, uh, we had 800 years of. So there are two types of coloniality that we have seen. One is the Middle Eastern coloniality, where we were ruled by the Muslim rulers, and then the 200 years, or maybe 300 years of the European coloniality. So India had witnessed these almost 800 years of coloniality in this millennium, and at the end of all that, where your education system is actually taken away, replaced with their own thought processes, where you have forgotten your own roots, the legacy that you have, the knowledge systems, some words that Sai uses, these are good to learn: ontology, epistemology. These are all related to the culture, the metaphysics, the philosophy of this land. I mean, the our being, our structures, knowledge structures, and those things. So we have actually kind of forgotten all that, and then we were writing a constitution. I'll perhaps pause for a further discussion on that when you have a question on that. So just limiting at that point with respect to post-coloniality. So here we were where a government was formed and which had to put in place the systems as to how we're going to govern ourselves. They're going to put laws in place and they're going to have an education system. Now, what did we do? I mean, we perhaps just continued the way it was like before, except that the white Sahib was replaced with a brown Sahib. Apart from that, the elite, Indian elite, just replaced the English elite, and they were ruling the way it was before. The educational systems remained same. The policies were similar. We were already continuing with respect to the coloniality that was actually seeped into our thought processes. So, so in terms of really these two, we mentioned these two colonialities, right? The Middle Eastern coloniality and the European coloniality. The Middle Eastern coloniality, just a little bit of both were actually monotheistic religions. Both wanted to propagate their respect to religions, but Middle Eastern coloniality, perhaps they plundered and then left. Maybe some of them remained here as settlers as well. But their idea of conversions was use the sword. Okay, you either convert or you get killed. There was no two things about it. It was pretty clear. But with respect to the European coloniality, it was a very subtle and that left a long-lasting impact. You did not know that they had actually colonized your mind, not just the land. They have colonized your mind, so you're already thinking like that. You and I are speaking in English. Our language, our education system, everything had already been usurped in the colonial way. So that was the post-colonial period that we have seen. Now it is in this space that Sai Deepak, and decoloniality is not again something that Sai Deepak has invented. Decoloniality, there is an extensive literature that is written, and unfortunately, I mean this again when there were nations. Now, see, here is India, where the majority religion is still there. You and I are still practicing Sanatana Dharma. But there are Americas, there are Latin and North America, there are Africas where the entire indigenous population had been wiped out or their system had been entirely subjugated. There, you can't really think of even 5% in any of those countries where it has been completely wiped out. However, there the literature, the scholars are coming out with decoloniality, where there are people from Latin America who have written that there is a need for us to really go back to our roots, think of our indigenous past, and reinvent. So, decoloniality, if we have to define, it is the reclamation or restoration of our past. That is where Sai Deepak quotes them that so this decoloniality, when it is happened in places or it is going to take place in those places, here we are, in spite of having suffered two waves of colonialities, the Middle Eastern and European coloniality, we have withstood, but we are still really stuck in the same colonial mindset, and it is important that we decolonialize our minds. That is the decoloniality, because it is in the mind that we need to really start working on.
Right. Yeah, great. Thanks for the detailed explanation. A few things came to my mind along as you are talking about it. Well, it's very funny. Just a few days ago, I was seeing some news from the South American, one of the countries, perhaps Brazil. The audacity and the ignorance still, having done so much damage, one thing we shouldn't forget, the Abrahamic way of coloniality also saw nature to be an exploitative factor.
Absolutely.
Whereas dharmic traditions across the world, the native traditions have always lived with nature, as part
Worship.
of nature. And that's the one fundamental difference, which is extremely crucial, because even till date, yeah, so the few days ago, there was a news article where the indigenous tribes in one of the South American nations who have been untouched so far, the missionaries apparently have made a plea to the government to go and preach the word of God to them and to change them as in uddharana. They had the samskarana kind of thing. They have to go and do that as if to save them from what? I think they've been happily living in their own world, but do you have to save them? Now, the problem is with that, you also bring in diseases. And we know that from history in South America and North America, diseases have been one of the biggest reasons why the Native Americans lost their lives in hundreds or thousands. So it's funny that the mindset hasn't changed yet. And we know of the situation where one of those guys went to, I think, Andaman Nicobar Island and got killed because he was trying to go and preach the word of God. So this being this being the attitude, I think we need to be very mindful of what is happening right now in India. I think the kind of evangelical kind of a fervor with which there is so much of advancement in converting in particularly coastal Andhra and other states as well. I believe Punjab is going down the same route. Tamil Nadu is also going down the same route as well. And that is still to be seen. And this aggression, this is to be seen as a very aggressive stance of encroaching into your areas and deprive you of your own dharma. The other point that came to my mind while you were talking about is how we need to kind of relate to the post-coloniality and the politics that have stemmed from it. The Aryan Dravidian theory it was a nice way to kind of keep the country busy fighting. Brahmanism, as in the Brahmins have been the ones who invented the tradition of Hinduism and to subjugate everybody. And it was actually a direct lift off from how they have seen the priesthood in the Catholic traditions and
Absolutely.
were pretty unhappy, and the Protestant aspects came about, and they just translated that into our tradition. So
Absolutely.
these have been nicely left for us as fodder, and the post-colonial mindset that we have, the coloniality that we have inherited, we are happy embracing all these things as facts. And also kind of the languages, although our languages, the Indian languages, are a lot more ancient than let us say English. I'll be very surprised if any youngster would want to even associate themselves proudly with their own language to talk, for instance. I mean, look at us, for instance, we are actually making an effort to learn Sanskrit and teach Sanskrit. And, we are actually, we are those kind of, we have had the realization to some extent, but and I know how hard it is to convince even the parents of this current generation. The parents, if I gave them a choice, do you want English or do you want Telugu? They'll automatically choose English. Way
Uh,
ahead. They won't even blink an eye. This is a fundamental problem that we have inherited of the coloniality as a mindset in current Indian society as well. All right, you wanted to say something else, Yogi?
on the point of how the native population, the indigenous tribes, right, how they had been influenced. So, uh, post independence, the Nehruvian policy was to not touch the tribes, be it in Mizoram, the northeast. That was the policy. Okay, but with just one exception: the Hindu leaders were not allowed to go, but the missionaries could go. This was a stated policy. Right? Now, if that was how your post-colonial thinking is, they have not really left the country. They're still there. They're still, in terms of the colonial mindset, still living with us. And as for the language, yeah. So I mean, while you speak of people who still prefer to take English, unfortunately, I mean, you would. If you were to say, ask somebody, what do you think of? I was looking up a question on Quora. What did British rule benefit, or was it disadvantageous, something like that? For example, there are people who still believe that, hey, British gave you railways, British gave you English language, because of which now you're able to get into great jobs. Now,
That's the exact
so
problem.
yeah, so man, people are not able to see the motive behind it, and they are not seeing, okay, while okay, if the English language had not happened, what would have happened? I mean, would India have been left behind? If English had not arrived, would railways have not ever happened? The thing is, yeah, I think we will save this point. I'll just say that, okay, it has become aspirational. Okay, European is the way to live. Europeans, because they have been really powerful, and they were powerful because of their inherent values and systems. So their way of living is the aspirational way. This is how,
Yeah.
unfortunately, people's mindsets have been really
Yeah.
uh,
I
changed.
think let us also make a fair point here as to what is the problem with the colonial subjugation that the Indian society, or the Hindu society, let us put it as Hindu society, is still a victim of, which they are not willing to get out of. Coloniality, let us say the Abrahamic coloniality or the European coloniality, has come in that form pre-independence. But what we see now is a globalized coloniality, a globalization under the garb of globalization, right? That's also a colonial way of looking at it. Now, if we, one of the things that people often make a justification why English education should be the main way to educate, even in a Telugu state where Telugu is the Telugu only can live in a Telugu land. It can't live in anywhere else. But people and politicians and the policymakers are happy to let go of Telugu even in that land, for instance. Why? So they make a justification that in the business, the world is actually talking in English. The world is dealing in English. Now it's very funny, the ignorance among the in general kind of public, how to say this, is that you have to actually teach every subject in English. Why? Nobody understands. I will give a very easy example. I had a colleague when I was working in UK who came straight from Syria. He only took 6 months of English, spoken English course and preparation for the IELTS exam. And then he's passed the exam after 6 months, and he actually speaks much better English than anybody else does. What does it say? You actually only need business English. You don't need Shakespeare in English. You don't need to kind of study subjects in English. You only need to study English well enough to speak it fluently. And I'm sure there are enough teachers, if we can commit to ourselves, who can do a great job. But this is the colonial mindset, which we are so willingly taking part in. And that's why I call it, the conversions are of three types. One is the religious, second is the cultural, and third is the linguistic. While the religious conversion is more like an overt or a covert job, the linguistic and the cultural conversion is a voluntary participation. I'm happy to let go of this because it doesn't give me a value. The other problem that the modern society, modern Hindu society gives is the value to a particular thing. And they're blatant enough to say that Telugu does not give me a job, so it's of no value to me. anything that gives value is to be taught in an education system. All right, so there are fundamentally inherent problems which we need to dissect and invigorate the right kind of a discourse in our society. So history needs to be understood. Why are we talking about the book that India, that is Bharat, is because unless we understand what has happened, we won't be able to come to terms with what has happened to me as an individual and to our society. Once that is done, it is pointless harping onto it and hanging on to it. You need to then make way forward. A way forward cannot be on negative terms. It has to be on a positive, constructive terms, in a way that we still can associate in the global world in a dynamic way. Like a Vishwaguru that India would want to be, we can still be that. But we have to let go of what has happened. I think Sadhguru uses a very nice word. Forgive, but not forget. And that's important. We can't forget. If we forget, we will be going through the same cycle again. All right. Okay. So I think we'll spare perhaps another 15 minutes of our discussion and see if anybody wants to join us in asking any questions or bringing their own points into this. I wanted to actually, Yogi, ask you, because you come from the business way of line of work. Let me just get this, because Sai Deepak has quoted this, and I think it's very important that we talk about it, which is that, sorry, give me just a minute, please. Okay, right. Yeah. So he's written this: reinscription of indigenous consciousness onto contemporary Bharat, which means we need to get that indigenous consciousness back into the Bharat, contemporary Bharat, was that it was not necessary for Bharat to play by the West's rules in order to achieve economic prosperity. Now, for the audience, basically what this means is, can India rely on its inherent dharmic framework, which means the dharmic way of living, thinking, all right, in working towards economic prosperity, which is independent of the West's model of economic prosperity. So as somebody who is already, who is very well versed in this area, I want to know from you, what is it really possible that we can do that from an Indian consciousness perspective?
Okay, so I'll just take it in a few parts. So let's acknowledge some good things that have perhaps happened, or the way it have gone about. So we have very we've actually been very negligent on investing in our humanities. Okay, in terms of really creating people who are very good at history or social sciences. We for a few generations now, including myself, we just gone about in engineering or medicine kind of a thing, because we were very clear that my previous generation weren't really, I mean, were a middle class or maybe lower middle class, and relied on a government job or a bank job. I wanted to really have a higher kind of a living. And software industry, the information technology industry is where there are a lot of jobs happening. So there is a great push towards engineering kind of an education. So all of us really went into a kind of an engineering background, and then got into jobs, and we went about it. Now let's see how now the things have shaped. I'll come back to the question in terms of how it could have led to a different kind of economic prosperity. So this level of prosperity was in terms of really, I would say, it was aspirational, but it was not really a long-term big give kind of a goal. Okay, I wanted to be better than my earlier generation, or give better education to my children. That's how perhaps it looked like, it sounds to me. For example, if you take the IT service companies that happened, that really created a lot of employment in India, this has a lot of innovation or innovative thinking happened, or were we doing things based on what somebody really asked, or we were delivering projects, or we were providing service which was already a certain business requirement stated. You are perhaps delivering to what was asked. Has there been a kind of innovative thinking where I am actually creating new products and services which would have created a Microsoft or a Google? No, it did not happen, or at least so far it has not happened. I'm hoping Freshworks, that recently did a Nasdaq entry. Hopefully, it's a Chennai-based organization, Chennai-based startup. Only recently, we are seeing a lot of startups really coming up, and whether some of them really go on to become great technology entrepreneurs or otherwise, where they'll create new products, we really are yet to see. So, in terms of really how our economic prosperity could have been different, now this is where the whole, again, the mindset and thinking. My if I aspiration My aspirational thinking is to look up to the West. If West is doing that, and if they have been successful and they are a developed country, I must also be doing that. Okay, so I just follow ape what they are doing, not really doing any indigenous thinking of my own. Is there something in my land? Is there something in my indigenous knowledge or knowledge systems where I could leverage and build something different, something where I could actually be unique, because I come with a unique way of consciousness. I am different in the way this land has actually brought me up. My way of thinking is very different. My cultural aspects are different. My whole knowledge and what I would say, again, the epistemology, the whole metaphysics is different. So
I
that
guess
being
one
the
of the
variety.
things, Yogi, I'm wondering is, for instance, the dharmic way of living includes the universal kind of well-being, and that's very fundamental. So universal well-being would be putting a lot of emphasis on societal, um, animals, trees and forests, waters, and the air around us. And so everything has then a place and deserves to be as a right to exist, is
Absolutely.
what a dharmic way of thinking would be. Now, the exploitative nature would obviously give a lot of dividends, because you're actually excavating a lot of things. Only yesterday I was thinking, surely if the petrol has been hidden all these years under the earth, it was there to be used perhaps, and therefore it is being used. Okay, why would it be there? I mean, let's say if petrol is not to be kind of dug out and it is just lying under the depths of the earth, then it at the time of pralaya, it just goes back unused, right? So in one argument could be that it was there meant to be used, and therefore it is being used. So I don't find anything wrong in that part of the argument, which I am the one who is proposing the argument as well. But what I would also understand is the extensive use of it, not looking at alternatives. So because we have been polluting a lot through the carbon dioxide emissions and all that stuff. So naturally, yes, we can use the petrol, but a dharmic way of thinking would mean that we would be taking into account, we will utilize these reserves, but taking in a relative stance of utilizing to the point that we can use it without damaging. All right. So that's one example I can think of, but that may hinder economic prosperity when you compare it with the exploitative way of looking at exploitative model, this is where I want you to kind of really link and perhaps help us what your thoughts are.
Yeah, sure. So Sai Deepak spends a whole chapter on how this European coloniality was hell bent on nature. So he makes a very simple kind of a distinction. Now, everybody who has a soul um, can look up to the God, but all the things that don't have a soul, the forest, all the non-humans, right? So they are resources, and they are from nature. They are natural resources. They must be exploited, and that's how the systematic exploitation of various natural resources happened. Now they plundered, including India. Uh, and which led to movements, the tribal population, starting of Chipko movement, the protection of trees and things like that. So if alone, I mean, if you had actually left the tribal population to themselves, perhaps we would not have been seeing the kind of calamities, natural calamities that we are seeing, that the forests are eroded. Now, Sai Deepak in one of the panel discussions puts a very good example. Now, think, okay, that how you have exploited all these interior of forests and the natural resources, which ultimately led to you occupying their lands and things like that. And how do you think Naxal movements really had to, came up and then continuing? If you had actually left them alone, was there a way for Naxal movement to really gain the kind of support it would have got from the natives the tribal population on the ground, if you had actually left them alone? So, after having really done all this, now they say that okay, hey, you should go for sustainable development. Okay, where I mean you have actually exploited and made good use of it and made your money. Now you preach to us saying that okay, your carbon emissions should be like this. You should have sustainable development and things like that. So that was actually a lot of big hypocritical nonsense.
So India is in a very interesting situation where I actually personally feel that we have shown the grit to work in a dharmic way in helping the world. For instance, the whole idea of Yoga Day is one way to kind of tell the world that we are all part of the same family. Similarly, I have been getting the vibes, the right kind of vibes, for instance, through the renewable kind of energy. India is trying to do its best, even at this point of time, when it can easily say that we haven't used the exploitative way of business economics yet. It is our turn now that the West has all done it anyway. We are going to do it. And that would have been extremely selfish to do so. But yeah, you want to say something?
No, I was just reading Gopachandra Garu. He has made a good point with respect to modernism. Okay, that's another important thing. So, thank you for bringing up that point. So, that is one word I have actually, since the time I have read the book, I'm being very cautious in using the word modern, which I use in the office day in, day out. We will say modernization. That is, modernization means it must be good, it must be great. The moment it is modern, it is great. And who brought in modernization to us? Europeans. So if you are thinking in a traditional way, you are dubbed a traditionalist. You are you are actually not inviting fresh ideas. Now, that is where Sai Deepak is very clear in trying to really make a distinction. But he quotes also the Upanishads in one of the discussions. See, we are not saying no to good ideas coming from anywhere. We welcome them. If they are good ideas, of course, we welcome them. And he is nowhere saying that, okay, by decoloniality, we will go back to the past, where some of the practices and are perhaps something which we would not really subscribe to as well, right? So, the moment somebody talks of Hinduism, again, that word, I'm using in quotes. Okay, they would throw sati, child marriages, dowry, casteism, all those things that is okay. So he's untouchability. So he's definitely not saying, so when we say decoloniality, we'll go back to the past where we are approving of these things. No, definitely not. It is
I mean,
reforms.
for that matter, any society in the world would have gone through a lot of upheavals anyway. I mean, a society by nature would have a different personalities in it, and different times will be throwing challenges and some bad practices and so on. I think we have shown the grit to own up our responsibility for the problems. And again, as I mentioned in the video, we are not shying away from taking responsibility. We have always found ways to better ourselves in the society, and we can do it ourselves. We don't need somebody else to preach, and that's continuing to happen in our case. I think we'll possibly kind of pause after this. I just want to kind of pick your my brains on this. Fair enough, we have understood where we have come from at the current stage that we are in. How dharmic is the current Hindu society, or how dharmic is the current Indian society? How dharmic is an Indian family or a Hindu family? I think it's a very provocative question I have. What would your thoughts be?
I think we should be very conscious. If we are not conscious, we will again fall into the trap without knowing. See, unwittingly, unconsciously, we have been uh, put into a colonized way of thinking. So, for example, somebody sends a WhatsApp forward that somebody passed away, then somebody puts RIP immediately. Now, where did
Rest in
RIP
peace.
come in from?
Yeah.
No, so that is definitely not our culture, and it doesn't make sense in our Sanatana Dharma. What is RIP for us?
Mm.
And that person, I mean, he would have seen other people putting it. No, I thought, okay, everybody says RIP. So I also say RIP. No, they're not really thinking further.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
or the racist tendencies, right? Okay, you if you look at, for example, fairness cream brands. I mean, they have a huge market, billions worth of business actually in India. So many brands of fairness creams. No, is it not a racist thing? The whole thing where they
Yeah.
said, okay, the black African. In fact, they so much so they said, okay, anthropologically, in fact, they're inferior. Their cranial muscles don't grow well, so they're actually going bound to be inferior. And their color is black, all blacks, browns, any yellow, anything not Caucasian, anything which is not white is inferior. So they
Mhm.
must be brought into their way of culture. So,
Mhm.
and what we are doing, we are okay. So, for example, somebody is looking for a alliance for their son or daughter, and they receive a photograph from somebody else. First comment, I will use Telugu. అమ్మాయి బాగానే ఉంది, కొంచెం కలర్ తక్కువ. అబ్బాయి ఎర్రగా ఉన్నాడు.
Mm.
What are these comments?
Mm.
I mean, they have, I mean, they have actually crept into our way of thinking.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
So, see, the way actually decolonial, I mean, all colonial thinking really happens. This is something I will actually throw at you. Your
Yes.
Vizag, okay. Why MVP colony? Why MVP colony? I
Mm.
mean, are we saying that okay, this so somebody did not really apply their mind in terms of what is the meaning of a colony? Perhaps they just thought in a narrow definition of settlement. No, but there is the whole thing where countries, nations have been colonized.
Right. Right. Yes. Yeah. So I think the point is that one concern I always have, having done all these webinars, particularly in Sanatana Dharma course and all that, is I often find that we are very quick to externalizing our problems, while the perspective needs to be understood. And this is a very welcome discussion on currently we are have not just today, but various other efforts by various people in bringing the right discourse on history, because the leftists have distorted history. What I've studied, I enjoyed history when I was young. I would enjoy the cultural history of temple architecture and all those things. But the point that being one, our effort to save dharma is not possible if we always end up externalizing the problem. The externalization only makes us escape our responsibility. We need to really look at what are the internal problems. Now, the internal problems doesn't mean, okay, suddenly somebody says, internal problems are caste, language. No, internal problem is the lack of grit. Sanatana Dharma teaches you there are fundamentally important qualities. One of them is kshatram, the vigor, the bravery, the courage with which you actually practice dharma for the benefit of mankind, society, and the universe. The kshatram is missing in the current dharmic context in our society. So please do not, when we talk about internalizing, it is not about looking at faults of this particular caste or this particular thing and so on. It is about what is as an individual. Am I practicing the Sanatana Dharma? And am I actually playing a role in propagating Dharma? This is where we have to possibly, I believe in a three layered kind of an approach. The first outermost layer is one which actually is able to counteract any external aggressions upon dharma. The second layer is where it is actually protecting the practitioners of dharma. And the third innermost layer is who are able to continue to do the job of propagating dharma, teaching it, and making sure that we not also kind of make progress, spiritual progress and dharmic progress over time to come, just like how our rishis have made a lot of progress. If we can do this, then that is what a robust response would be for times to come. Otherwise, we'll forever be vulnerable and be victims, and it's not great playing victimhood forever. Um, I guess we will pause here for a while. Thank you very much, Yogi. I'm sure you have something
There
to
are
say towards the end. Yeah,
sorry, just a couple of messages from Jinu and Gopi Chand
yeah.
on the language, and you mentioned that. So the thing is, our education policy. I haven't gone through the new education policy, but it doesn't really take away or provide any vernacular language to be made compulsory or things like that. We still, the thing is, much of our technical education or the utilitarian education is still English based, or be it in medicine or engineering. Okay, it's a known fact that okay, people can learn well in their native language. If taught well, they will learn in the native language much better than in a foreign language. So here, what is happening is they first have to pick up the foreign language and then learn the trade or that particular profession or that particular nuances in that field of knowledge. Instead of that, if you had actually taught in a vernacular language, it could have been possible that okay, even now the codes around 70% don't are not productive after college. So if that being the case, it's not that English made a difference to them. So if that is the case, perhaps we could have tried with the vernacular language, and maybe they could have picked up the skills better in the vernacular language. So we will have to wait and see as to how the uh, language policy. But I think, see, we're not going to really see a huge transformational change with respect to drastic policy things, at least in the language front. But we at least hope on the other question that Shastri you put in with respect to the dharmic front. Okay, where uh, when our temples are likely to be freed from the state intervention. You don't have mosques and churches under the government control. So why have temples, and it is supposed to be a secular country. So why really have that? So this is where an interesting point that Sai Deepak makes in another conversation. If you say church, okay, and you want to relate to church, okay, you think of a school or a hospital, because they have actually set up schools and hospitals as well. Now, if you talk of a temple, can you immediately think of any such thing? Uh, there are no real attachments immediately that come to our mind, because you have not allowed the temple or those communities to really do something on their own. There you have
I
government in
think, to
place.
be fair to the temple systems had everything under their umbrella traditionally. And we also very well know the Grihastha played a huge role in society's welfare. So we had our own ways of responding to that system and playing a constructive role for the society's well-being. So temples are not seen to be such centers anymore because of the neglect. If only, for instance, you see the temples that are being built, the one in Birmingham in UK, it is a center for everything. It is a cultural center, it's an educational center for dharmic learning, and it is also a place of worship. So we are capable of it.
Absolutely. If you leave the community run the temple, they can come with their own agenda in terms of how, what are the philanthropic activities that they can do from there. But
Yeah,
you have a government control which is preventing that.
yeah, yeah, very much so. Okay, with your permission, Yogi, perhaps I'm sure we can always meet up another time as well if there are more important topics to cover in the same book. But perhaps we'll open to the floor to see what they have to say. And also, if they have any, please, if you have any questions, please raise your hand, and so that we can hear your question. And especially if those who have read the book may also make any comments on what you have found interesting. Okay. Ani is not the usual tendency of human beings to look at the negative side of a groom or a bride or even a piece of photograph. I didn't understand what you meant by that. Are you generalizing it that we are expected to see the negative? Please clarify what you have written. Yeah. Prasad says, sir, would it be good if the world has one religion, that is humanity, rather than so many mysticism? I feel the problem is politicians. I'm Prasad, I'm sure you attended the Sanatana Dharma webinar. I think we need to be much better at this than what you have suggested. Humanity is part of spirituality. It can't be exclusive. And we have already made it very clear Sanatana Dharma holds the key and has always done so. Let us not whitewash and let us not minimize the importance of spirituality here. In fact, the entire world has been practicing what is considered to be similar to Sanatana Dharma all these years, all the time immemorial. Human is just part of this entire universal creation. So humanism isn't the answer. No, it is humanism is part of Sanatana Dharma. And we are good at it if only we practice Sanatana Dharma the way it should be practiced. Okay. Kalyan says temples in India are under the control of the government through its endowment department. Hence, we are handicapped. Again, that is, well, it doesn't stop us from making a case, and we need to be proactive. Dharmic practitioners have to be vigorously campaigning why we need to get the temples out of the government control. Again, the statement that you have mentioned is a negative one. You're saying we are handicapped. That is, I'm sorry, again, that is externalizing the problem, not taking the responsibility for our own kind of betterment. Prerana says Sri Ravi Shankar has his Art of Living ashram along with CBSE. Yeah, great, fantastic. I'm sure there are a lot of great people doing a lot of great work as well. I want to actually invite Gopi Chand, who is my great friend and medical colleague. I really appreciate Gopi's presence here. Gopi, would you like to share something very quickly? If you have read the book, or I'm sure you have come across a lot of discussions on this. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hi, Shasti. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are.
Fine, fine. First thing, I haven't read the book, but I listened to many of the videos of Sai Deepak, and he comes across as a very articulated. He comes in a strong way and in a very articulate way. Not just speaking, but in the contemporary time, it's the responding to a question that makes a great orator compared to yesteryear. So Sai Deepak is one who is able to present as well as answer. So based on those things and based on your shared invitation, I joined the gathering. I say that there is much of churning about all the dilemmas and all the possibilities. I felt that the session, the program, I was driving, so I could only catch it between and then. So I felt that the book is a takeoff point, and many members are bringing their own journeys using the book as an occasion to bring many things into either reflective sharing, looking for other ripples, or bringing their own points of view regarding long kept dilemmas, which may not be actually dilemmas, but which are kept as dilemmas. So I appreciate the energies, and since the conversation was happening and the chat was there, I was responding to some of the members. It's a dynamic one. I appreciate everyone in the program, in the session, for the intent listening as well as active participation. Cheers to you. So for the moment, let me just say that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We are also honored to have Dr. Satyamurthy Garu here. Dr. Satyamurthy Garu, would you like to, Namaskar only, would you like to share anything from your own experience, the wide experience, the vast experience that you have had?
I think you have raised practically many points, relevant points, more particularly about history of what happened, etc., and what we should do, which is the more important part of the discussion. See, out of the 800 years of foreign rule we have had, more than 600 was by the Mughal and other invasions, and 200 from British. Of that also only 100 years after Macaulay has come into picture. That is 1857 and onwards. And it took about 90 years for us to get freedom thereafter. And Macaulay has very clearly and absolutely emphatically announced and also implemented a policy which had very acceleratedly destroyed our connection to our roots by the introduction of English education system as a compulsory mode of promotion and aspiration, and also by depriving the agriculture of its importance and the zamindari system and all those things which have been brought into the country. So it ruled for 90 years. The entire structure of the country has been changed fundamentally, more than the so many years of hundreds of years of rule of the Mughals. And our leaders in freedom struggle did recognize this problem. And many of the speeches which we used to hear from leaders of repute for the past, they were all reflecting on the Macaulay system. However, after the attainment of independence and the constitution has been framed, we are supposed to rectify many of these things. However, what happened, is that there was a fundamental sabotage of things which occurred, not by intentionally by anybody, but by circumstances, that left the Indian constitution to be framed by 4 individuals, of whom only one individual has been finally entrusted with the writing of the constitution. And he is a great man, did a great job with that, but he didn't have enough time to do that. So after writing a third of the constitution, the remaining of that he has pasted from British constitution. So it's a cut and paste job, what has been done. And the real transformative forces which were required to be implemented at that juncture could not have happened. For example, the Indian Constitution prides itself of its beautiful book, which is illustrated by some nice artists, etc., were replete with the heroes of Hindu culture. But in practice, it has not been given any importance in the day-to-day life, so that the so-called principle of equality, etc., has been destroyed, equanimity is destroyed, and secularism has been put into picture, which is an additional destroying factor, which is more of the what you call a socialistic concept, which is not practical, as proven in the world already, in Russia and China and every places. So it's a mixture of Abrahamic religion and the left liberal so-called things, which has influenced the entire constitution and not giving its real spirit. So actually speaking, because of this, so many clauses in the constitution are not favorable for a equitable development of our energies in all directions of philosophy, religion, and socio-cultural progress and things like that. And therefore, this imbalance has to be rectified. Several people have talked about reforms in our way of life, which is influencing the people's thinking. And of them, is required to have, starting from, what you call legislative reform, bureaucratic reform, judicial reform, and media reform, and things like that. What should people do to gain Indian ethos? Seven suggestions have been made, none has been implemented. I'm seeing a danger or upcoming thing coming where the entire constitution has been rewritten or modified with respect to two-thirds part of it, which is not favoring a harmonious and growth. When I read this announcement of this Zoom dialogue, trialogue, whatever it is, I was attracted to see what kind of, because you're talking of Indian state and constitution also, how our dharmic systems can get more prominence in the constitution itself, so that we can assert the rights in a proper way.
I think, Satyamurthy garu, we need to really bring you back for a discussion, because I often make this observation that the generation that Satyamurthy garu belongs to have been quite brainwashed by the British rule. I'm sorry to say, but Satyamurthy garu is a refreshingly different person. He actually has always kind of given me a lot of insights in a dharmic outlook. But we have lost at least 2 good generations post British time, where they have been extremely kind of apologetic of dharmic viewpoint, and have done a lot of, in my view, I'm sorry to say, but a lot of damage has been done by
three generations. I would say we could give time for settling from 1947 to, let us say, 1960, for settling down as an independent nation. But what happened in 1960 till today, almost 50 to 60 years, is about 3 generations of people have been completely left to be brainwashed in the same way as what Macaulay has dictated.
Yes. Gopi, you want to make a point? Unmute yourself.
Yeah, 2 quick points. One, words are powerful, expressions are powerful. Just like there have been repeated invasions, someone is looting, plundering, everything. It makes us look weak and like how Maro.
Very true. Very true.
If we play, we've been there for 6,000, 10,000 years, for recorded history and long, and where many civilizations have vanished because of the conquest and so many attacks, we could never be annihilated, and we remain. So we are that kind of fighter, survivor, thriver, that kind of thing. So that similarly, 2 generations lost, 3 generations lost. Fact, if we put it in another way, this group or another similar groups that we are leading and being part of, within 2-3 generations, when we got hold of ourselves.
Oh, you lost Gopi. I think he got disconnected. Okay, while he connects again, we are obviously running too close to finishing time. Does anybody want to say anything? The last few minutes belong to you. If anybody wishes to say anything. Annapurna Garu, you want to say something, I guess. Yes.
Namaste to all.
Namaste, namaste.
I didn't read the book. I have just listened to some of the sessions which Sai Deepak has conducted. He speaks about assimilation and accommodation. So in the process of my, I think I'm, of course, earlier generation to all of you, maybe similar to Dr. Satyamurthy. How are we examples for our children or our students, or that matters a lot?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are we true models, true examples for them to copy us? Let them copy us if they want to copy us. What are we doing in our daily life to set examples for them? That is very, very important.
Yeah.
Are we using our own mother tongue or any other Indian language? Are we following certain, we may call it as ritualistic behavior, but that is necessary. Deepam వెలిగించడమైనాను, బొట్టు పెట్టుకోవడమైనాను, దీపం పెట్టుకోవడం. Let us not be covert in our response. Let us be brave to be overt in our show that we are Hindus.
That's true.
Internalizing. That is very, very necessary.
Yes, once again, internalizing the responsibility rather than externalizing the blame game forever. I think both need to be done, but we also need to own up our responsibility to. Very well put. Thank you, Anupama. Yeah, Gopi. Yeah, quick comment, Gopi.
Similarly, many things like do we treat our servant, or what is the line in which we treat them?
Absolutely,
okay?
Very
do
good
we give
point.
respect? And certain habits which we have towards, say, for example, widows, or these things we have to definitely think about.
Definitely. I'm sure we can. I think the fundamental point we can carry forward is that we are capable of finding answers to our own problems. Let us do that. We don't need somebody else, some Tom, Dick, and Harry to come and tell us what we are supposed to be doing. And that is the colonized mindset. The colonized mindset looks for external source to tell us what we should be doing. And that is again externalizing. So we need to be sincere enough in and honest enough in accepting the flaws. That is the concept of Swadharma anyway. Swadharme nidanam shreyaha, that particular shloka itself means that despite the flaws in Swadharma, and even if the Paradharma is beautiful, I want to stay in my Swadharma and make it a better one. And I need to put in my responsibility to make it a better one. I would rather die in my Swadharma than to accept another dharma, is what Krishna has anyway said. Yeah, Gopi, 1 minute for you.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, that's it. Just like we were not beaten all the time, but we were fighting, and we finally threw everybody out. Whoever is attacking, whoever came as refugee, wanted to mingle with us, we allowed, and we are living together. Similarly, in three generations wasted, kind of that's one way of looking at it. Once we became free, in 3 generations time, we started looking at the fault lines and looking at the heritage and started working on it. And Satyamurthy Garu mentions, and all those things are, they were restless. They were not completely given up. They were having all these queries, questions. They traveled with the questions, and now they are giving that questions to the next generation, so that people work on. So it's within 3 generations, there is a bouncing back.
Okay,
that's what I would like to put it. Second,
Gopi always has the most optimistic kind of, it's always great. If anybody needs a little bit of cheering up, you need to just buddy with Gopi. He will always rub the optimism into you and make you a more happier person. And it's great to have that attitude. Yes.
10 seconds.
Yeah.
Regarding what else is happening, just the other day, I was doing an FT Live session on contemporarizing and making use of Navadurga Dashami as a tool for enterprises and the management members. Perhaps we can bring the heritage and the history in an applicable way for contemporary use with some innovation,
Very good.
learning, joy, and also application. So you can check that session also, so that it will become a tool.
Very nice.
Celebrate as well as
Perfect.
use it. That's the thing.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks a
Good.
lot.
Cheers.
Thank you. Okay, I think time is up, so we will close this session. Oh, Bharati Patel ji is also joining us from UK. Namaste, Bharati ji. Hope you're doing well. So, do you want to say anything? Okay, never mind. Right. Okay, perfect. I'm sure there are quite a lot of others. And maybe a few have joined for the first time. So glad to see you all here. So namaste once again. We hope to conduct a lot more satsangas like this and discussions. I hope you found this discussion useful and honest. And that's what we want to do. And we being dharmic practitioners, we want to be true to it. All right. So once again, and let me just finish by saying Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkhabad Bhavet Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. All right, perhaps we'll see you all again next time round. Thank you once again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.